Welcome to Guitar Gabble, a place for people who love guitars. These are conversations with musicians, guitar enthusiasts, techs, and collectors about their guitar journey and their love of the instrument. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and be sure to sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargabble.com. It's David still with Guitar Gabble. Thanks for checking out the podcast. And before we get rolling with Chris Kelly, just a friendly heads up. We've got a pretty slick guitar auction going on at guitargabble.com. Head over that way when you're done watching or listening to the podcast. You might see something that has your name on it. Share it with a friend, whatever. It runs through August 31st. If you can't make it there now, check it out later. Thanks so much, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Guitar Gabble podcast. I'm David Still. I want to first off thank you for your time and thank my guest, Chris Kelly, for his time. And this is part 2. Man, he's back for more. And God, kind of cat has my tongue for a second because Chris and I have been jamming for over an hour. It's been awesome. Hopefully he's not too worn out. It's kind of late. It's not as late out in Texas as it is here on the East Coast, but we're going to keep rolling. So what we did real quick, we had so much fun the first time, had a lot of feedback from people that listened to them, watch the podcast, had a bunch of questions because Chris, I do have to summarize your resume again for those that maybe are catching this for the first time. Okay. So I'd have it all nice and halfway printed out. So Chris started with Robin Guitars in Houston right out of school as a national sales manager and director of artist relations. Then went into the same role with Ibanez and also headed up their custom shop. And from there over to Peavey doing the same thing, and then also with Budda Amps. So
Trace Elliot and Composite Acoustic.
Yeah, thank you for filling in the gaps that I.
No, that's okay.
And so a lot of what people were asking about is Chris was at Ibanez at a real pivotal time for Ibanez and music in general.
84 to 95.
Yeah. So 84 to 95. Yeah. So that's kind of how we're just gonna jump in. So I got a bunch of questions.
Okay.
Chris, thanks again for your time, man.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Well, thank you. And thanks so much for the fun we've been having before. I was like, Chris, bro, we're going to be here all night. Like, I'm good to go, but I don't want to wear you out. Like, because you're the one that's got the mental drain. I just asked the questions.
We may have to do another one.
we will. We're going to talk about that when we get done. So I have the printed questions, and we're just going to kind of rip and read. I did not summarize and consolidate, and some of these are like paragraph questions.
Yeah.
And anything that if it's off limits, you just say, well,
Yeah, I'll be as succinct as I can.
Sure, man. So and we're gonna go with the easy ones first.
Okay.
I love this one from Ian Cohen. It's funny. He asked, how many rock and roll hangovers have you had? And do you have a best cure? And you just take it from there.
Actually, I'm sure I've had several. It depends on, I was very close friends with Kurt Cobain, who was quite a partier. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of rock and roll hangovers. Most, hopefully, I don't remember. But I have to say that they were all pretty fun because they were in such odd situations, like backstage at the Greek Theater or at Sean Penn's double wide trailer on the side of Maui, or, just really ridiculous type of situations would come up. And, there was always a party in LA in the 80s. That was when you went to LA. And I would say if I had a hangover cure, it would be tacos.
Okay, tacos. Yeah. That's a good afternoon lunch. Clearly, that was not for breakfast. Yeah.
Well, it could be. It could be. Sometimes we didn't come home till breakfast.
Yeah, man. I was gonna say what we're talking about the 80s and LA.
Yeah.
Mealtime didn't matter.
No.
Yeah.
We'd go to Barney's Beanery and eat breakfast at 7 in the morning.
From being up for just a little while, of course.
Yeah. 3 or 4 days.
So Ian had a couple. I kind of, I wanted to jump in with that for some fun. So kind of 2 quick, fast questions. This is your personal playing style: clean or dirty tone, and single or humbucker.
Well, I play a 58 Telecaster. So, and I play a Vox AC30 1963 top boost. So I get a really gritty tone out of that. And then there's a friend of mine named Alan Durham, and he makes pedals here in Austin called Durham Electronics. And he makes a pedal called the Sextone. Charlie Sexton, who plays with everybody, one of my best friends, gave me one of the Sextones. So I have that. I actually have an old Big Muff that Kurt Cobain gave me. And that's pretty much the way I roll.
Yeah, man. You get it done with that. Ian asked about process of becoming an endorsee of a brand, and do manufacturers ever kind of just, on a whim, roll the dice on an unknown artist? Have you seen that? Do you have any experience with that?
Well, that's what I did every time.
I know.
That's actually called the standard. You're always rolling the dice because you have no idea if this guy's gonna, pick up his game. Because remember, we're talking about personal, individual people, so they might have other issues other than music. I'll give you a great example. Do you remember Sean Lane?
Playing the name game, man. I get all lost.
Okay, well, Sean Lane originally played in Black Oak, Arkansas, but he was literally one of the most amazing guitar players on the planet Earth. And no one knew him, but I knew him. So we did a NAMM show one year, like 80, and I was famous for putting together like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Reb Beach, Frank Gambale, name a guitar player.
It goes on and on. Yeah.
So Andy Timmons. So I would put them all on stage. And I remember one NAMM show, I brought up Sean Lane with all of them. And Steve Vai didn't even know who he was. He's like, who's this guy? And Sean was 5'3", weighed 300 pounds, just like a big muffin. And, but oh my God, he was so amazing. I mean, was faster than Steve Vai was, more precise, played piano, drums, just crushing. And so I would like to throw people into situations and see what happened, because I had no idea. These people had never played together. And I would put Kenny Arnoff or Dave Grohl on drums and Gerald Beasley on bass or whatever. And we would do these incredible NAMM shows. I mean, just unbelievable guitar playing. And so a lot of it is you're flying by the seat of your pants always, because you don't really know how these people are going to react. And my example is Sean, I picked him up from the airport the morning of the show out in Anaheim. So I said, have you eaten? And he's like, I'm starved. So we go to the Hilton Hotel, to the Hilton's little restaurant, and it's 8 in the morning. And he orders 4 eggs, a half of a loaf of bread, and 8 White Russians. And it's 8 in the morning. And the lady goes, the bar's not open. And I was like, get me a manager. We've got 50 rooms here. I need 8 White Russians on the table. He drank them all. ate the 2 pounds of bacon, eggs, and toast, and then played that night and ripped everybody apart. It was amazing. But, you know, you never know what you're going to run into or how people are going to act. And then you have the other side of that is like Joe Satriani, my best friend, one of the most stable, beautiful, talented human beings on the planet. And he was also, you know, very uplifting. It took me 2 years to get his neck designed. He was very picky about the way he wanted it felt. And so I spent a lot of time working on getting the neck right. You know, it took us 2 years to do it, but we did it. And, you know, I told you we did a chrome guitar for him. Mm-hmm. And when we started trying to chrome wood, you know, through the chroming process, you've got your pickup holes and everything. Well, the first guitar I sent him, he sent me back a picture of his hand. The chrome had split and it cut his hand open. And I was like, oh, shit, that's not going to work. So we just were always in a state of trying to figure out how to do it. When Steve Vai wanted the floral pattern, he and I went to a little fabric shop in East LA called, I think, Levine's. I've never forgotten it. And it was Steve Vai and I, and you know how Steve looked, rock star. And I wore nothing but shorts and T-shirts. And we go in, and it's us and about 75 old ladies buying fabric. And we find this black flowery floral pattern. And he goes, that looks like my mom's curtains. That's it. And I was like, let's get it. So we did it, and we did the floral pattern, and people were like, no one's going to want that. And of course, people went nuts over it. And so a lot of it was just being aware, being present, being in the moment, and being able to say, all right, well, let's take a chance on that. Now, not everything worked. I remember I get a call from Steve one night, and he says, I need a heart-shaped guitar with 3 necks on it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's going to be pretty good. And I'm thinking, what? Because what I'm thinking is we want to sell a lot of these. We don't want to sell just a couple. I love you. Son's leaving, sorry. I would always think we want to sell a lot. How many 3-neck heart guitars are we going to sell? So we made him one, and then thank God we never had to make another one. You know, if you asked me for something special, then I would do it or try to do it. And so I would always try to stay focused on what the goal was. I've got a funny Prince story. I get a call from Prince saying, his manager, Tim, saying, we're going to fly you up to Paisley Park because Prince has a guitar idea he wants you to show you. So I was like, oh, yeah, I love Prince. I'll come up there. So I go up there, and they take me in a room upstairs. He walks in. He's very quiet, very nice, sweet guy. And he unrolls this paper, and it's got that crazy shaped guitar thing. And I look at it, and I go, and I keep staring at it, and I'm like, man, I don't think we can do this. And he's like, well, why not? And I said, honestly, I don't know how many people would buy it. It's so different. And when I talk about designing a guitar, it's very simple. It has to look like a wheel. It's got to roll like a wheel. It's got to feel like a wheel, but it can't be a wheel. Because we're used to, you know, guitars being what they are. So anything different freaks us out. You know, that's just common with guitar players.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people are more aware, David, like with the samplers, the Kemperers and the fractals and things of that nature. But, you know, at this time, it was still the early time of guitars being developed. So I told him, I said, yeah, I said, probably you can get one made here for you in Minneapolis, but I can't do anything with it. He just rolled it up, said, thank you, goodbye, walked out. They had me back on the plane within 20 minutes.
Wow.
Flying me back. And that was it. I mean, that was the end of it. I never talked to him again, never saw it again. But, you know, if people came to me with something that was so out there, my job in endorsements is to get you to play what I'm selling. So my conduit is the player, you know, not the product necessarily, but the player. How do you get an endorsement? Well, you reach out to the artist relations at whatever company that you're interested in. You send out your EPK, you know, your electronic press kit. You tell them what you want to do, how you want to do it, and you sell yourself. And listen, the only thing somebody can say is no.
Right.
But guess what? They can say yes too. And I had a lot of people that I said yes to that I think probably hung up and went, what the hell? I said yes. So the artist thing is about believing in yourself, number one. Don't follow trends. There's 3 rules. Number 1, you have to be either influential. Number 2, you have to have a fashion. Or number 3, you have to be a part of a fad. If you get on the fad at the end, then you missed it. Leave the fad alone. When I say a fashion band, you know, like a good pair of blue jeans comes around every 10 years. Duran Duran, you know, all the Flock of Seagulls, you know, all the fashion-oriented bands still have careers that they come back around every 5-10 years. Influential bands, the Stones, Leonard Skinner, they're always going to sell product for you because they're influential. Led Zeppelin, you know, I saw somewhere somebody bought a Jimmy Page Gibson, a new one for like 15 grand. Pickups, right? 3 humbuckers. I'm like, what the hell? But the point is that you have to be persistent. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have your ducks in a row. And that means, you know, when you're talking to that guy, you have to know what you're saying to him. And you have to realize that he's trying to sell product. Now, you may have an idea for a guitar or a new amp that they may need. That could be one way. You send them your music. Your music is just so good that they've got to give it a listen. They've got to give it a try. But the only thing that I was ever afraid of was someone saying no. Oh, looks like I got my Guitar Gavel shirt.
Sweet.
Right. Things are looking up for me already.
Dude, I love it.
Yeah, I'm in. So, you know, a lot of it is just be persistent. Believe in yourself. Believe in what you're doing. And make sure that you have the right people on the phone. You know, when you call an A&R department, you're going to get an assistant or somebody like that. And you have to be able to get through the doorkeeper, I call it. And I used to basically, I had an assistant, but I used to basically just answer my own phone. And, you know, that somebody would call and I'd say, well, send me your stuff or let me hear it or when are you going to be playing? I'll come out. A lot of artist relations is in the field. It's every night I go to 4 or 5 shows just to find one gem. And I may not find anything, but if I find one thing, then that was a success. And, you know, there's some bands coming along like Radkey, 3 young brothers from Missouri, amazing band. You got to check them out. As I said, Kingfish, Ingram, there's just so much good music that's going to flow forward. The way when they took away the copyrights and our money from records, the way you made your money was tour, 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 merch, 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 and license, 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 and in that order. So the last 2.5 years, David, when people couldn't tour, they weren't making any money.
Mm-hmm.
So, now it's coming back and you're going to see a floodgate of people touring. And that's the best advice I can give artists right now is get your EPK together, get out there and play. I don't care where it is. Get out there and play. Work your social media. I'm not crazy about, the social media thing myself, because I have so many things else that I'm involved in. I'm working on 2 records right now. I've got Robert Randolph playing on one of my records. I've got Blue Oyster Cult playing on one of my records. Devin Townsend. Do you know Devin Townsend?
I do.
He sang on Steve Vai's vocal record. He is from Canada, and I just played on 3 of his records with my son. He's probably one of the most talented people on the planet Earth. Literally one of the most talented people. Plays guitar like Steve Vai, but sings like an opera guy. I mean, just crazy talent. So, there's people like him that like necessarily in America that we may not know, but he'll go over and sell out Wembley in London, and sell huge stages out, and just brilliant. And I'm very blessed that he gave my son and myself the opportunity to play on 3 of his records this year.
That's awesome.
So I would check them out. They are fantastic. They'll blow you away. He is so good. So, and he was another guy, I just had a feeling about him. I met him when he was 15, and I just knew he had something wonderful. And he ended up moving back up to Vancouver and produced everyone from Machine Head, every heavy band you can name. But the guy is just a monstrous talent. So if you get a chance to check him out, check him out. He's humble, kind, and incredible. But when I'm looking for talent, it's got to hit me here. You can say everything you want to say, and I'm going to listen. But at the end of the day, I have to feel it in my gut. And I've been known to listen to a song on my headphones like 27 times in a row, just to, am I really hearing what I'm hearing? Mm-hmm. And then, a lot of times I'll call an artist back and say, I like this, but, maybe you should make a change here or there, or because you build such relationships with them. You're staying at their home when you go to LA or New York or wherever. You're a part of the family. You're breaking bread with them. You're carrying their kid around. You become a part of the family. And the music world, we're one big family. And what you're going to see is touring's going to come back and people are going to make money. Your merchandise has to be exquisite. You've got to have the T-shirts. You've got to have, the hats, the flip-flops, the whatever it is that's hot at that point in time. And then try to license, try to find an agent like Cobalt in Nashville or somewhere. Do you know the band Cage the Elephant?
Yeah, I remember Cage the Elephant. Yeah, man. Okay.
Well, one of my best friend, Lincoln, was the guitar player in the band. And they had already hit it really big. And he came to see me and was staying at my house. And he was like, I think I'm going to quit the band. And they were like at the top of their game. And I'm like going, I don't know if that's such a great idea. If you know what I'm saying, let's talk this through. And he goes, I don't want to be on the road anymore, man. I want to write songs and produce other people. So I said, you know what? Quit the band. Go to Nashville, go to work for Cobalt, start producing and writing. Well, he did. That was 5 years ago. He's as happy as he can be. He's producing everybody in Nashville, writing for everybody in Nashville. And what I encouraged him to do was not quit a major band. Believe me, I don't do that. But what I encouraged him to do was follow my heart. You know, do what's in your heart. And I said, do you really believe this is what you want? And he was like, absolutely, I believe it. And he did it. And so, you know, you have to know when to encourage people in the right direction, and also when to encourage people in the wrong direction. Because, you know, a gig will come up that they may think's a good gig. And, you know, I'll be like, I don't know about that. You know, you might want to check that out again. And it's because I know everyone from artists, musicians, agents, managers, fans, my mom and dad. I mean, you know, just like everybody. And my dad, by the way, played pedal steel.
Cool.
Which is a really weird instrument. I can't even do anything on it. But so that's a big important thing about endorsements, is have something that you're going to sell. Because see, in the old days, David, the record label sold you. Record label supplied you an A&R guy. He came by the studio once a month, you know, and said, yeah, I like that. I don't like that. Here's $250,000, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, you have to do all of the groundwork for yourself. Most important thing, when you come prepared, you're solid. If you are not prepared, then you're in trouble, because there's never been a show I did or anything that I did where something might not have gone right. And you've got to be able to deal with it. If there's 30,000 people out there and your guitar cuts out, you don't just look at your tech and go, hey, what are we doing here? Get busy,
Yeah.
and figure out what's going on. So a lot of it is just troubleshooting, you know, your career. And being an artist, a musician, it's not the easiest life, but it is a very gracious life. And I have been so blessed to have I've met every hero. B.B. King was one of my best friends. I've met everyone. The only person that I ever wanted to meet was Jimi Hendrix, because he's my favorite guitar player. But of course, I was too young. But the reality is that, you know, believe in yourself. Don't let anyone tell you that, you know, oh, I don't like your music, or that isn't going to make it, or this is going to make it. You believe in yourself. You control your own destiny, and you will succeed. I promise you, you will.
It's awesome advice. I will, before we get into any technical guitar questions, generally speaking, from the Ibanez era, I'll kind of give you more of these touchy-feely ones, if you will, but for lack of a better way to describe it. Okay. And if anyone didn't want me to read their question out loud, they should have let me know, because I'm just ripping and reading, man. Oh, so this is from Craig Belcher, man. Craig, he just says, he's like, Chris seems so chill. And actually, Craig sent me this in a private message, so maybe I'm blowing this up. He wanted me to ask, how do you handle all the how do you handle all the egos, or are there less egos than we think in the business? And then it's you know, most of these questions are like 4 parts. So he says, you've obviously seen the highs and lows of the industry from an interesting perspective. Can you talk about, or give an example of a lowest low and a highest high? And how did you navigate through those times and survive?
I think there hasn't been a lowest low or a highest high. It's all been one beautiful ride. Yeah. If I were to try to pick out a low, how could I possibly do that with the life I've had? I mean, I've known everyone I ever wanted to meet. I've played with some of the best musicians on the planet Earth. Worked on design guitars that people will be creating art and music long after I'm gone. That's the most exciting thing to me, is that things that came out of my head and my team's head, my team always had a team, people are going to create beauty and art or anger and angst and whatever they want with. And I feel so proud that we came up with paintbrushes that people could actually use. You know, when I got to Ibanez, my first couple of experiences weren't awesome because it was, you know, a Japanese corporation. You had to learn how to work within their system. I didn't know a lot about that. And, you know, I had to teach myself. I had to be aware. And I learned from everybody. I mean, the guy in the back sweeping up after guitars. And you have to be ready for everything. And the way you treat people is with dignity and respect. No matter how they're treating you, you treat them with dignity and respect. You may not work with them, but you make sure that you give them a good feeling when they left, no matter what. I have a funny story. My first 2 weeks on the job, I get a call from Tom Tanaka, who was the president, and he had a really funny accent. He go, Chris, is no crazy, man. He said is no for some reason after every sentence. He go, is no crazy, man. In the front of the office with a bottle of tequila with no top, and he's got no shoes or shirt on. Can you come get him? And I'm like, what the heck is that? So I go to the front, and as I'm walking to the front, it's Jocko. He's in town playing with the weather report. And he's got a bottle of tequila with no top on it, which is true. No shoes on, no shirt on. He just gotten dropped off at the factory. Didn't know anybody. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Jocko, come back to my office. And brought him back to my office, and he ended up taking a bass, turning it upside down, plugging it into a Fender amp that I had in the office as loud as it would go, and just started Jimi Hendrix. It was ungodly. But the fact that I was able to share that moment in time and nobody else was there. And it was just he and I in my office in the back, and he's just ripping and drinking. And I took him into Philly and took him to his hotel, met Joe Zawinul and all those guys, and got him some food. He hadn't eaten in like 3 days. And, you know, just stories like that were so, you know, I look back and I go, did that happen? But it was so crazy that, yeah, you always look back at those things and think how fortunate and lucky. And on my worst day, it was my best day. There was no such thing as a bad day, you know, because I was doing what I love. And I would suggest anyone who wants to play music, love it and live it, man. Live every inch of it, because it will take you places that you can't imagine ever going to. Harley Peavey had his 50th anniversary at Peavey. They asked me to put together a show at the Hilton Hotel during the NAMM. So I thought, okay, I don't want to do just a regular show. I want to do something special. So I called Leonard Skinner and Van Halen, Blue Oyster Cult, and Robert Randolph, and said, hey, how would you guys like to come and do a show for me, all playing each other's songs on one stage? And they agreed to it. And I'm like, they're never going to go for this. But Gary Rosden was like, hell yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. So we're rehearsing in the afternoon. Now, these guys have never played together, and they're on one stage at the Hilton, right? So everybody's playing three steps, and then a Van Halen song, and then a Blue Oyster Cult song, and so Robert Randolph says, "Man, come over here." And I walk up to the stage, and I'm like directing everything, and he goes, "Nobody knows the words to Freebird," and I realize, holy crap, I gotta find something. So I go and find a transponder, put one on each side of the stage, and run the lyrics so the band can just sing while they're looking. But I didn't even think that Van Halen wouldn't know Leonard Skinner, or Leonard Skinner wouldn't know a Van Halen song or a Blue Oyster Cult song. And the funniest part of that is Buck Dharma, who's one of my best friends, who plays in Blue Oyster Cult, asked me if I wanted to play cowbell on Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yes.
And so I was like, I was backstage, and I was like, man, this is harder than it looks. I don't want to do it. So Nicolas Cage was back there. So I go, "Nick, would you get up and play cowbell with them?" And he tried it, and he sucked. And so finally, I see Kenny Arnoff walking in the back, and I go, "Kenny, would you come play cowbell?" And he's like, "I would love to." So Kenny Arnoff played cowbell on Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper,
Dude.
Van Halen, and Leonard Skinner. And do you know what it cost me to get all of those guys there to do it? Hotel rooms and booze.
Wow.
And flights. They didn't charge me because I develop relationships. So when you develop a relationship, you can go to those people and say, "Man, it would really, really help me. And I would be forever grateful if you would do this for me." And they did. And people were like, "There's no way you're going to pull this off." And I'm like, "Probably not, but I'm too stupid to not think I can." And we pulled it off. It was an amazing show. And afterwards, I remember laughing, thinking, that'll never happen again. And my first week at Ibanez, they did what was the big show where they played in London and then Live Aid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what I did is I set up a bench on stage right at Live Aid, and had three of my guitar techs there. And so whatever band came out, we would grab their guitars, set them up for them, and they would go out and play. So I actually stood on the side of the stage for Live Aid, and that was my first official gig at Ibanez.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, man. I was 24, 25 years old.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's like you had no idea what you're in for. Even
No, you have to be ready for anything. And that's what I've kind of tried to teach my son is, you're only as good as you are today.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday's past. So, be your best today, no matter what it takes, be your best. And I find that I'm very excited about what I'm seeing in music coming on now. I think there's people have had a lot of time to play and write and record. And, you're going to see a floodgate of people out playing. Yeah. And, the one thing that creates is with the economy the way it is, when you've got 14 of your favorite bands coming in 1 month to play. When I was a kid, if 10 bands were coming to Houston and tickets were $10 back then, I'd have maybe $30. So I'd have to pick 3 out of the 10 or whatever that I wanted to go see. And you're going to see that happening again because, ticket prices are going up. It's pretty crazy. I was out with Gary Clark and Charlie Sexton about a month ago, and tickets at Antone's, which is the blues club here in Austin, famous blues club, like $150 to see the Archangels. Wow. And it just, the club was packed, but not a lot of people can afford $150 2 or 3 times a week to see a show.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Don't even, when I look at some of the VIP stuff, are like not even VIP, but quasi VIP, right. 800, $1,000.
Yeah. People are complaining about that, because it's not really a VIP experience. A lot of the backstage thing now, because of COVID and because of the restrictions, you can't even get near the band. And it's like, it's sad, but I think that will change as things start to clear up and we'll come back around. But part of the experience for a fan is that one-to-one, that, when they're playing your favorite song, they're playing it for you.
That's right.
There may be 30,000 people there, but they're playing it for you. And that's the beauty of it, man. I remember walking off stage one time and this guy ran up to me and he was like, dude, that song you wrote, it reminds me of my grandmother. And he started crying. And I started crying. And I was like, dude, that's why we do this. We do this to bring out people's emotions, make them forget about what's happening in the world for 2 hours. Let them enjoy whatever it is that they enjoy for that time and space. And so that's an important part. We're in the entertainment industry, no matter how you want to look at it. But it is going to come down to touring and playing. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a band, I don't care if you're young, I don't care if you're old, get out there and play. I asked B.B. King one time, I said, BB, he was like 80 something. I said, man, how long are you going to do this? And he never called me by my name. He called me Young Mang. And he called me Young Mang for 30 years. And he was like, I got too many kids to quit. He's like, I'm going to die on the road. And so he pretty much did. So the reality is that just having such a plethora of different people that taught me, gave me good advice. I would always ask B.B. King or Buddy Guy, what was Guitar Shorty like? Or what was Robert Johnson like? Or Mance Lipscomb or Son House? Or, because I could tell you every story about them, but I wanted to know that little insider thing, and that was the best part of the job. Was I'd have a conversation with a great guy like you, and I could just like listen and go, wow, man, I had no idea that that's how that happened. And back to the Steve Hunter thing I told you about earlier, I confronted him after I gave him his guitar and I said, you played the guitar on that Aerosmith record. And he was like, yeah. And I knew it because I knew his style. I could hear someone and intimately know what their vibrato was, how their phrasing was, and could tell you who they were without even having to think about
it. Dude, there's no way to segue out of that. I'm just going to go into the next question. That was beautiful. Sure. I mean, I was going to write down, I'll just say it now, grateful heart. That's just like grateful heart, compassion. Your monologue there was just oozing from that. You started with, there were never any low lows. How could there be?
No. Wow.
I mean, that's just beautiful. Thank you so much for that. All right. One more kind of like, winger question, not literally. We can talk. We talk about Rev. Maybe we will. So, my friend Darko Grubishik asked, who do you, well, this is the full question, but you pick it apart. Who do you want to work with, but that person was hard to work with or somehow never got around to doing business with? So maybe a summary of that question too would be, yeah, who was one that you had hoped you were going to get a deal with, or they were going to come your way and it just, your paths didn't cross for whatever reason?
Well, the one deal that I really wanted to do was Kurt Cobain for Starfield Ibanez guitars. And I did 2 Starfields for him. One of them's in the Hall of Fame and the other one's in the Hollywood Rock of Fame. But he ended up, they weren't perfect for him. So I guided him to Fender and he ended up doing the Jag Sting. So I wanted to do a guitar for him and never got the opportunity really because he didn't really play them. And I would say that everybody else that I ever wanted to work with. Now, I built a lot of designed a lot of guitars. I did a guitar for Carlos Santana, Neil Schon. You can't name anybody that I didn't build a custom guitar for. Literally everybody. I found my spec sheets. I kept all my spec sheets that I would build. When we build a guitar, first thing we do is do a spec sheet. What radius neck are we going to do? What kind of wood are we going to do? What kind of tone is he looking for? And then I'd call Larry DiMarzio and say, Larry, I got a new guy here. His name's Frank Gambale. He's from Australia. He's a sweet picker. I need you to come up with some pickups for him. So we would work together and he would come up with the pickups. And then I'd call Diodario, and then my buddy Donnie Dawson was head of A&R there. And I'd say, look, I found this new band called the Black Crows, but they don't want to work with me because they like vintage stuff. And Ibanez was known as the metal kind of rock guitar. Mm-hmm. And they weren't that at all. So I passed them on to Donnie and he signed them. And so we worked kind of in like a whirlwind. If I couldn't do anything with them, I would pass them to someone else. I did guitars for George Van Epps, Joe Pass, Carlos Santana, sweetheart of a guy. But for some reason, one reason or another, they didn't work out. One of my favorite all-time players is a guy I call E. His name is actually Elliot Easton, and he played in a band called the Cars. And so he calls me Chrissy, and I call him E for some reason. But I did design the guitar for him, and it was supposed to have 3 singles in it. And when we opened it up in the hotel room, it had 2 doubles in it. So it was just like, oh man, so you didn't always hit a home run, but most of the people that I wanted to work with, I worked with. And I chose everyone at Ibanez that we worked with, besides Steve Lukather and Bob Weir. Besides those 2.
It's funny, dude. Like the Black Crows, I get it. Why maybe they didn't think Ibanez was right for them, but they had the Bob Weir connection. Like, man, just like,
yeah, right.
Come on.
Bob Weir was an Ibanez artist. It weighed about 60 pounds. Was covered in every kind of perfing, and I just wasn't really into that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I've always liked lighter guitars. Because all of my friends that play guitar walk like this now, I've got this heavy Les Paul. I love it. And I'd go, in 20 years, you're going to have some spine issues. But, it's kind of funny because you just pay attention and people will tell you what you need to know. Mm-hmm. And then you can come back and say, well, look, this is why a humbucker is not a good idea in a basswood or alder body in the regards that you want to use it. maybe we should use it to a flame maple top and a mahogany back with maybe an ebony fretboard. Because people would go, ebony, rosewood, maple, what are you talking about? So I would literally take the samples out and say, here's what we're talking about. Feel this. How does this feel? And then people would start to learn themselves, and they would call me and go, hey, I saw these Seymour Duncan pickups. I think I want to try them. So I'd call Seymour and say, look, I've got this guy, whoever it was, and he wants to try some of your pickups. Will you send me some? And he'd say, yeah, great. I'll send you out whatever you need. So we all worked together. And a lot of people think it was a lot more competition, but it really wasn't. It was, we all had a goal of building the music business. And, if I could help Kramer with someone, I told you I passed on Eddie because I knew I couldn't maintenance Eddie, Joe, and Steve at one time. There was no way I was going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And Eddie was kind of already established with Kramer. And I just had a gut feeling about Joe and Steve that I knew I was in the right direction. But like I would go from working on a guitar for Joe and call George Benson and go, hey, we need to talk about your guitar. And, oh, Chris, that's cool. So it was so much fun because like 1 minute you're talking to Monkey and Head from Korn, and then the next minute you're talking to John Abercrombie or, one of my old Merle Travis or, one of my favorite country players or whatever. So, and a lot of it was just knowing what was going on and hearing it. So I was very fortunate, literally knowing to take myself to the place I was supposed to be was a gift. And I don't know how to teach that gift. I never could teach the Japanese how to do A&R. They would come with spreadsheets. Well, okay, this band is doing this band is doing that. And I'd go, well, look, there's no one in that band that's number one, influential, number two, fashionable, or number three, a fad. So what are we looking at? Those are our rules. And they're like, that's too simple. And I would say simple way is best way. And they had a saying, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So I live by that. I try to keep it as simple as possible.
Dude, that's so cool, man. Just look, I've got the company American Express card. I'll go handle the artist relations.
Yeah, right.
I'll see you in a few days.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. A lot of nights in strip clubs. A lot of flights to Las Vegas. We did the craziest things because we had so much money and time that we would be like, hey, let's Roy Thomas Baker, the great producer who did Queen and The Cars and Muddy Waters. He also was a pilot. So he was married to Francis Ford Coppola's sister. And he'd go, Chris, I'm flying to Vegas for the weekend and I'm taking Janie Lane from Warrant. Come with us. We're going to party. So we'd go and blow like, 30 grand for the weekend. But like I was 27 making so much money and didn't really have anything. So it wasn't a problem. Now I'd love to have that money back now, but back then we didn't even give it a second thought. We were just living our lives, and it was a really good time to be in LA.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get into a couple of technical questions. So we're going to kind of, we've talked a little bit about the 7-string. We're going to jump on it. So I'm going to read this verbatim. You pick and choose out of it. And again, this is from Scott Thompson. Thank you, Scott, for the paragraph of question round 1. So you pick and choose. He said he'd love to hear the story behind the introduction of the Ibanez universe. Circa 1990, what was the musical inspiration or creative need that drove its development? Whose idea was it? And after all, the universe has been associated with multiple Ibanez artists, Vi, Monkey, and as you have commented previously, why did Ibanez ultimately go with the addition of the low B string rather than the high A? I think you had kind of typed that out in a message.
Yeah.
So again, 6-part question, whatever you were able to absorb from that, go.
The 7th string was Steve Vai. Steve Vai wanted a 7 string. He was working on a record called Passion and Warfare. And we tried to do the high A, and the gauge wouldn't work. So we did the low B on it. And it was really that simple. I took him the guitar to the studio as he was working on the record. He wasn't super happy about it in the beginning, but then ended up using it and loving it. And then I had sent some out to Korn because I needed to get them in the hands of players. And to be honest, David, I didn't even know many people that played a 7 string. I couldn't play one. So I was like, all right, I don't know a lot of people that are going to use this. And then I met a band called Limp Bizkit. And so they're like, yeah, this guy, Wes Borland, played guitar. He's like, I could use a 7 string. So all of a sudden, I just started sending 7 strings out to people that hadn't quite made it yet, but I knew they were going to. So, back to the Bob Hope thing. I knew enough to take myself there. So the 7 string was Steve's idea. It was for Passion Warfare. He ended up using it. To this day, he still uses it. But it was his idea to do it. And very simple magic. Steve is such a virtuoso. People, all of my friends would ask me about Stevie Ray Vaughan, Steve, Joe Satriani. No one knew Stevie. Stevie wasn't into metal guitar players. He didn't even know who Eddie Van Halen was. So, but all of my friends knew I was close to Stevie. So they'd go, well, what was Stevie like? What did Stevie play? What did Stevie do? And so I found myself like explaining to these great guitar players. Like one night, Joe Satriani and I were out hanging out and decided to go to Larry Carlton's studio at 3 a.m. So Larry was sitting there and we were having some beers talking, and Stevie's name came up, and how does he get that tone? And I remember saying, you could hand Stevie a stick with 4 strings on it, and he was going to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, period. And he just was literally one of the greatest guitar players ever, one of the kindest, most beautiful people ever. And I'm very proud to have called him a friend and someone that I really believed in. And also, he wasn't into gadgetry either. He was into old Strats and stuff like that, old Marshall Plexis. And so I remember I did get him an Ibanez 808, TS 808 tube screamer. I got one for him, one for Eric Johnson, and one for Eric Clapton. We only had 3 left at that time because we moved to the TS9. And I remember giving them that, and they used the crap out of that. But the 7 string was Steve's idea. And we didn't really think we would sell a lot of them. But then when I started listening to Korn and going, wait a minute, man, Kurt Cobain's coming. There's going to be a flood of people leaving the glam rock and playing old time rock and roll, soulful. It may be heavy. Korn was very creative and inventive and influential because they mixed rap with heavy guitar. No one was really doing that. That was Aerosmith did it with DMC. But you know, Monkey and Head, they had their own form, their own style, and that really, in my opinion, is what sent the 7-string into orbit. Because then all the shredders now had to get a 7-string,
Right.
because now they're shredding.
Yep.
So it was just so lucky and just right place at the right time. That's all it was.
That's cool. Kind of along the same lines, Scott's got a question about the Wizard necks and the Super Wizard necks. And let's see, he's asked, he would love for you to address the 5-piece maple. What is it? Wingate?
Yeah.
Wood, butcher blocking of the wood. And if that was, he asked, was that introduced to add strength to the design?
Stability.
Okay.
Because we took a lot out of the Wizard neck. It was thinner. It was a thin radius. It wasn't the standard 7-inch fender where, you know, you had a chunk neck.
Yeah.
So it was strictly for functionality and strength.
Easy enough.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of brain surgery going into it.
Okay, so and then kind of the last little bit, well, pretty much from Scott, talking about in our first podcast, you talked about the thumb behind the neck for Vi and Satriani. And let's see, sorry guys. He just wanted you to talk more about that. What was the whole story? Why so thin on those necks? Why the jumbo frets? The butcher barking a little bit. Yeah.
The jumbo fret thing I got from Stevie Ray Vaughan, because he put the big 6100 Dunlops on his Strats to give him better vibrato. Stevie had hands like a catcher's mitt, dude. I mean, when he hit this, and I think he played with like 15s or something. I mean, I couldn't even bend his note. It was so strong. And so what I noticed, and I told you this before, simple observation. When I got out to LA, I noticed that no one was playing like this with their thumb over the neck like we do here in Texas.
It's definitely a big time Texas thing. I mean, more people do it now, but back then, like that's Texas. Yeah,
that's Texas blues, man. I mean, that's where it came from. So that's what I was used to. So when I got out there and I see, you know, guys like Paul Gilbert who had hands this big, and Joe and Steve, and they all are playing with their thumb way behind the neck, so they have full access of the neck. But I realized on a 7-inch radius, you're not going to really be able to hit all the notes with your thumb behind the neck, because you're going to be stretching to get it out. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, okay, let's thin the neck out and let's flatten it to a flatter radius. And then it's more of a classical style and fits more of their playing, because they're shredding. They're not, you know, hitting you know, blues notes or things like that. They're shredding. So the idea was to make it more comfortable for them. And the easiest way to do it was just to kind of flatten everything out and then reinforce it. And that turned out to be a real winner for a lot of guys. People really like that Wizard neck. And Joe's neck was not a Wizard neck. The funny story about Joe's neck, Joe Satriani, I'm sorry, it took 2 years to actually get it perfect. He's very much perfectionist. We got the guitar right. I take the necks. We had built 2 necks. I took him to San Francisco to his house, and he's checking them out. And I need an approval on this neck because we are going to market.
Yeah.
I have no time left. So I don't even think Joe knows this story, actually. He said, well, I'm not sure. So I said, well, let me have your main guitar, Blackie. I'm going to take it to the hotel tonight, if you don't mind. And he was like, yeah, no problem. So I'm sitting there with the micrometer and I'm going all over this neck, and I'm like, they're exact. There's no difference. And then I realized at around the 12th, there was a little bit more wear on the back. So I got some sandpaper and just did a little bit of sanding on the back at the 12th, and then took it, put it back on another guitar, took it to him, and he's like, that's it. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? 2 years. 2 years.
Dude, that's great. That's incredible.
It was hilarious because Mike, my luthier, was with me, and he goes, dude, you can't do that. That's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. But Joe was so sensitive in what he felt that he could feel, and he had played the crap out of that black guitar. So it was really well worn. And so I realized we've got to befit this neck as close as we can. And by the grace of God, we were able to do it. And we met our deadline, and Joe did really well with that guitar. And we did really, really well with that guitar.
That's awesome. I've got, for the sake of time, 2 more questions and we'll wrap.
Okay.
This is a good one. So this is a little different line than what we've been talking about. Another one from Scott. I really like it. This is going to the acoustic guitar world. Talks about, Yamaha's done well with electrics and acoustics.
Mm-hmm.
However, Ibanez seemed to put more eggs in the electric basket than the acoustic basket. He's asking, was that a conscious business decision from Ibanez in the 80s and 90s not to focus on acoustics? And that was really it. I don't know how much there is to it. And then there's one more and we're done.
That was it. We wanted to be really great at one thing.
Got it.
When I got to Ibanez, we were it was Fender, Gibson, Kramer, Charvel, and then us in overall sales per month. After we came out with our first designs with Steve and Joe and everyone, we went from number 5 to number 1. So we started outselling. We were selling, I think Fender was doing 8,000 guitars a month in the US, and we were doing 15,000. Wow. So we wanted to focus on what we did well. And I was like, look, I play an old 1958 D28 Martin. It doesn't get any better than that. There's no sense in trying to compete with a company like that or build we didn't want to build a low end acoustic. Mm-hmm. So our focus was on doing what we did well, and that was electric guitars.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
And after I left, they ended up doing acoustics, and I never played one that I even would consider purchasing. So I guess they just didn't really put the effort into it.
Yeah. Well, and this is a smart business move. Do what you do well and keep your that direction. And to Scott's defense, I didn't read his last sentence. He's like, you guys are pretty busy, like slamming it, making electric guitars. So it makes sense if you.
Well, the other thing about it, man, is I had 2 luthiers. We can only build 16 guitars a month. That's 2 guys.
Wow.
And that's a lot of guitars for 2 guys to build in a month. So, and they have to be perfect because they're going to Carlos Santana and Joe Satriani. So, our focus was on quality, not quantity.
Sure.
But after we got them built, then we sold so many of them that it was worth our while taking the extra time to get the electric guitars. There was a time from like 85 to 95 when MTV was on, where you couldn't turn on MTV and not see an Ibanez guitar.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
You couldn't buy a Guitar Player magazine and not see Reb Beach on the cover, or Steve Vai on the cover, or Mike Scotia or Ministry on the cover. everybody holding an Ibanez. So we took it to them. I mean, and we had a plan. We stuck by our plan, and by the grace of God, we were very, very lucky and fortunate. And as I said, I had an amazing team. I mean, I had probably the all-star team of guitars, because when I ended up leaving Ibanez to start playing music, everybody that worked with me ended up going to Fender, Gibson, you know, and continuing their own journeys. And so it was just being able to, I guess my baseball days made me realize that you have to have a great team to have anything great. If you don't have that, you know, you're not going to succeed. So really my success came from the people that worked with me. That's really what made my success. The Mace Baileys, the Mike Lippies, those guys. I mean, they would jump through fire for me. I would call them it. And I'm so passionate that if I woke up at 4 a.m. and had an idea, I'd go next door. Mace and I were roommates, and neither one of us had girlfriends because all we did was work on guitars. So I'd go knock on his door, and he'd go, "What?" And I'd go, "Man, I've got an idea to sink a tremolo." And he's like, "Dude, leave me alone." I think he moved out after that because he couldn't take it. But yeah, it was just about passion. It was, I wanted us to be the best for the right reasons.
The last question.
Okay.
My man, Steve Kuykendall. A
I
good
love that guy.
What's that?
I love that guy.
Everybody loves that guy. We love you, Steve. Yeah, he's so great. So I'm like, crap, man. It's the back page. It's the last one. If I didn't ask what Steve's written down, I'm gonna get hate mail, not from Steve, but from everyone else, because everyone loves Steve. So this is verbatim his question: who was the most down to earth and likable artist you encountered?
Well, it would have to be two people. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Joe Satriani, who, by the way, is the godparent to my son Buckley.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, Stevie was the most beautiful, kind, loving human being you could ever meet. Joe, to this day, is still one of my best friends. One of the kindest, most gracious. We always used to tease each other, you know, and I would like I had a friend that his son was 13 and a huge Joe fan, and Joe was in New York City, and I said, you know what, let's get him on the phone on FaceTime, and I'll have him say happy birthday to your kid. And the guy's like, oh my God, could you do that? And I was like, yeah, of course, no problem. So Joe gets on the phone with the kid, and he's like, yeah, he goes, keep playing that guitar. And he goes, and watch that Chris Kelly. He's a shady one. I'm like, what? So we always, we just would tease the hell out of each other. And I'd go stay at his house, and he had a place up in Lake Tahoe, and we'd sit out on the balcony, 10,000 feet up in the air, watch. I remember we were both drinking a Sam Adams one time. And we're sitting on the balcony, and I see this massive eagle. And I was like, God, Joe, look at our lives. This is beautiful. And he's like, yeah, it really is. And the eagle flies down into the woods, flies back up. And I said, man, look how graceful. And the eagle had grabbed a rabbit and dropped him from 10,000 feet so he'd hit the rocks. And then he went and ate him. And Joe and I drinking our beer, and I was like, well, time to go in. You know, those two gentlemen, there's nary a man better than Joe Satriani on every level. You know, he's also an incredible artist, like painter.
I've read that. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy good. Crazy good.
When you got it, man. You know, It's like, damn, some people could have shared some of it.
Dude, he's got more than enough to go around. And I've got a picture of me and him and Mike Lippy when we're in our probably 20s, and we all have Michael Hutchins hair. We all had curly, NXS, Michael Hutchins, the singer. We all had that hairdo. And now, he's bald and my hair is like, I don't even know where my hair is. But we always laugh because we look at that picture and we go, man, those were the hair days. So, it's been a beautiful, wondrous ride. I would tell anyone who has 1/4 of my life, man, live every bit of it and live it like there's no tomorrow. And because the only promise we have is now. And if you think you can do it, David, you can do it. If you think you can't do it, then you can't do it. So I would tell anyone out there, know you can do it, believe you can do it, and do it. I mean, we all are waiting. We're all waiting. I'm waiting. I want to see what's next. So also make sure you have your guy, the amp pedal guy, reach out to me.
Yes, I will.
I'll be more than happy to. I love mentoring. I mentor several bands, several guitar companies I do consulting and stuff for. So it's my pleasure and my passion. And I'm so grateful to you. Hey, you're doing what you're doing. You're getting stories out there. I love looking at the guitars that you post. It's like, damn, I used to have one of those. You bring up so many wonderful things, and it's the joy in my heart that is music and family. And not in that order, of course, but pretty close. But it's been just a beautiful, wondrous ride. And I look around and I've got 30 or 40 platinum gold records. And I think if you would have told the 14-year-old Chris Kelly working at the record store that he would end up with a Jane's Addiction or a Joe Satriani or whatever platinum and gold record, Chicken Foot, I would have said not on my worst or best day. But there was one person I believed in, and that was me. So, man. If you think you can, man, do it. Take over the world. We need it.
So true. That's so true. Listen, man, that is the best place to end it. I don't even want to say anything. Thank you for your beautiful spirit, your love, your grateful heart is all that's oozed out of this last hour and 15 minutes for me. And that's a lot of it's all who you are, but it's a lot of how you've ended up where you are among some of the other things, some really cool intuition, a great memory, so on and so forth, but man, grateful heart. And I want to end it at that. Chris, thank you so much for your time. You don't even know, I've got 2 clicks to end us. I'm going to click out. Thanks everybody for listening. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Guitar Gavel podcast, and a special thanks to Steve Kuykendall for composing this music and being such the great guy and friend that you are. As a reminder, hit the subscribe button and sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com.